All right, we are now live. Welcome to Cannabis is Medicine with Dr. Carmen Jones. Today we will be discussing female and male issues. I see we have some folks backstage. Hello, Mary. My name is Nana. And we'll keep you back there during the lecture. Once we start our question and answers part of the conversation, we will add you to the screen. Just listen through, chime in through the comment section, and have some questions ready, and we'll be happy to hear them. Thank you for joining us. All right, get our banner going. Here it is. Here it is. All right. So Dr. Jones is the founder and owner of Wildflower Medical Consultants. She is also our director of medical voices at CEIC. She's been studying and practicing medicines for 30 years, and she focuses on holistic healing through natural remedies. Um, her main um, her main type of patient are people who have complicated medical histories. So without further ado, I will allow Jones to take over. She's very informative. Listen up, and we're very happy to be doing this.
So good morning. Thank you for having me again. So for those of you joining us for the first time, this is the final lecture, if you will, in a series of 5 we did every Saturday for the month of June for CEIC, which is Cannabis Equity and Inclusion Community. We are in Las Vegas. And as she mentioned, I have been practicing medicine for quite a while, but focus on actually um, cannabis medicine and try to integrate that with the way we practice Western medicine. So um, I'm going to share the screen, and what I'll do is, for those of you that are first timers, it'll be new for you, but those who have watched the other lectures, it's going to be some repetition, only because I want to prepare the listener for. Oh, I'm getting lots and lots of feedback. Can you hear that? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it's gone. I'll continue on. Prepare the listener for the topic of the week. And I was tasked with this very, very large topic of male and female health issues. So I'm just going to point out some of the main issues that people may be familiar with and how cannabis can help them. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share the screen. And we will go from here. All right. So, as mentioned the last few times, for those of you who don't know, cannabis has been with us for our entire existence, pretty much. Thought to have been discovered originally in China, long time ago, over 10,000 years ago, and was one of the earliest plants to be cultivated in the form of hemp. It's been used to make uh, uh, several things that are practical for our lives: clothes, shoes, paper. Started being used as medicine, as we can discover, as far as we know, 2,700 years BC, all the way to kind of current day where it was grown in the colonies by George Washington. We have pretty much always used cannabis as medicine. That is prior to the period of prohibition in the late 1930s. But prior to that, we used it for a number of things in our medicine, including giving it to children. In the bottom right corner, you can see infant relief. So today, as I just mentioned, it has been used and, of course, questioned throughout our modern history. Marijuana Tax Act was 1937, and that's what caused the criminalization of it. But it was not until the early 70s where President Nixon declared a war on drugs and made it criminal and placed it on the newly formed DEA Schedule 1. Uh, and by doing so, declaring that it was a drug of no medicinal value. So, fast forward a little bit, 25 years after that, approximately, California established the Compassionate Use Act in 1996 and became the first state to uh, legalize it essentially for medicinal use. And to today, where at my last count, all but two states have some form of cannabis use laws on the books. However, it remains Schedule 1 drug. So, with this rapid increase in acceptance, reacceptance of cannabis as medicine, who's doing it? It's most likely middle age and older adults. They are the ones who have seen the um, greatest increase in growth. Uh, the statistics show that it's had a 333% increase in use. And as uh, I was going to say, as you would expect, but I think this would surprise some people, teenage use has slowed down um, over the past few years with much less new users. So, what are we talking about? This is the plant. This is what we're talking about. So, I'll go over a little bit about the plant itself. And remember, this is a lecture for the average person. And I kind of want them to be able to take away some basic information. Certainly not going to be very detailed about the um, anatomy or the botanical aspects of the plant, but we'll do what's appropriate for this type of lecture. So, three types of plants. So, plant varieties of the cannabis indica, cannabis sativa, and cannabis ruderalis. This is what they look like, essentially, when growing naturally. And when analyzing what they uh, provide in terms of um, uh, assistance to us, it is listed here. The cannabis sativa can improve our creativity, focus, reduce our nausea, increase our appetite, aid with pain relief, depression, fatigue, etc. Cannabis indica, the one in the middle that was shown on the previous slide, can help with pain as well, muscle spasms, anxiety, nausea, appetite as well, sleep apnea, uh, insomnia, fibromyalgia, and some other things. So the little one on the outside, Cannabis ruderalis, is the one that kind of grows wild and at the moment um, mostly in Asia, but does not have any commercial or medicinal use yet. Certainly not in the wider, broader spectrum of the cannabis world. So then, where does hemp fit in? Well, hemp is actually a cousin, if you will, to the cannabis sativa plant. And it's very similar. It looks similar, has a lot of the same characteristics. The only difference, the main difference, is that it contains um, only 0.3% of the chemical called delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the chemical that causes the euphoric feeling that we call a high. And because of that, that is the exact distinction that the law places on it as well. So whatever they're using, uh, whenever they declare a plant to be a product to be made from hemp, it has to contain less than 0.3% THC. All right, so why bother with all of that? This is important because we learned in the early 90s that our bodies contain an endocannabinoid system. So, just like we have a cardiovascular system, neurological system, etc., um, a new system was discovered called the endocannabinoid system. And this system has been thought to play a role in regulating some of our main body functions like sleep, mood, appetite, memory, and reproduction and fertility. And this is important because whether you as a person add external source of cannabis to your system or not, this still is there and working. This is a very basic schematic of it, excuse me, very basic schematic of what the endocannabinoid system looks like. Um, there are receptors throughout our body. We're going to call them CB1 and CB2 receptors. And as you can see, they are focused on various areas. Some overlap, but the whole idea is to show how it assists the body in achieving those processes I just mentioned, in regulating, or another word is modulating, those systems in controlling our mood, our sleep, our appetite, etc. So this is a photo, actually direct, head on photo of what the plant looks like. It's so pretty. The little part in the very center of the screen is called the flower or the bud, and that's the part that is the most active medicinally. The whole plant, though, all the way to the roots, have been used for medical purposes. But if we kind of zoom in on that top section, we are going to see these little crystally hairs. There, those are called trichomes, and that is where essentially most of the medicinal value comes from. The trichomes, those little crystally hairs, contain what we call cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. This is um, pretty common plant biology that is without the cannabinoids. Other plants have terpenes, have flavonoids, and it's because they provide its unique characteristic. Um, the terpenes help provide the flavor and the smell, and the flavonoids the color. Here's where we'll break it down. So the cannabinoids, one of the components that I just mentioned, two of the main ones that everyone discusses and knows and has heard of, if not that, prior to now, you will notice it everywhere from now on, is THC, which I just mentioned, that component that causes the euphoria or the high, and CBD, which is short for cannabidiol, And these are two of the most popular or well known cannabinoids. They regulate how the cells communicate with each other to achieve that modulation or that enhancement that I mentioned a few minutes ago. And what we know now is there are over 120 cannabinoids found in the uh, terpenes. That pretty picture there is to show you all of the different spices, fragrances, and um, uh, colors, even that are present in the world. Terpenes are what, again, gives them the flavor and the aroma to the plant. We know that those have medicinal value based on our knowledge of aromatherapy. So there are around 200 cannabinoids known, but we only tend to focus in the cannabis world, particularly for everyday purposes, on approximately 6 of them so that we can help identify what's good for our bodies health wise. But the bottom line is these chemicals, the cannabinoids, the terpenes, even the flavonoids, all working together to give us what we call the entourage effect. This is where everything kind of comes together to perform its um, uh, magic. Here's an example of 6 most popular terpenes, certainly the most popular ones that they test for, and their effects, how they smell, and some strains you can find it in. So obviously, this is something that I won't go over entirely today, but you can see. Let's pick one example. This one, the second one, A, which actually stands for alpha pinene. You see the pine tree there? That's a hint, right? Pinene smells like pine, fresh mountain air, kind of woody, and has those particular effects to it. So I'll move on if that's important to someone, which it should be if you use it medicinally. That's something you can research on your own. Flavonoid. Flavonoids are this unique chemical substance that are found in plants, pretty much all plants, that create the coloring to the fruits, vegetables, and plants. Remember that pretty purple that we saw on the plant, on the marijuana leaves that I showed a couple of slides ago? That's by the flavonoid, given to the flavonoids. Excuse me, because of the flavonoids. And this is important because in medicine, we discuss how we should eat things of different colors. In fact, I remember hearing one campaign remind us to eat the rainbow. And so this is kind of an example. And part of the reason it's that way, or that is a suggestion, is because flavonoids are known to be very powerful antioxidants. So this is one of my favorite charts only because it kind of breaks down what cannabinoid is primarily active in which areas of the body. Just like we talked about with the endocannabinoid system, this is kind of putting it in the schematic where you can see it in terms of practical information. So, today, as we move on to our topic of the hour, um, some of these things cross over, um, meaning many things may cause inflammation or pain and can be affected by these various cannabinoids. But for the most part, the generalization is that you need a variety or combination of many things. I like to remind patients, just like with anything in life, whether it be your day to day life or your body, you have to maintain balance. All right. So, cannabis. and female and male health. So typically, when I show a picture like this, the people in the cannabis industry think about male and female plant characteristics. This time I'm talking about actual men and women. So, ladies first, how does cannabis affect issues with women? So, these are some common female gynecological problems. This is a very large, broad topic that I've been asked to cover, but I'm going to just kind of go over some basic problems. Women have often severe menstrual cramps, pelvic pain, and that includes people who have perhaps fibroids or endometriosis. Um, I'll go over that in a little bit. PMS, premenstrual syndrome. I could have added some other letters because they have other disorders connected to it. Dysmenorrhea, abnormal uh, uterine bleeding, menopause, and sexual issues, including vaginal pain during sex and decreased libido. All right. The reason I brought up endometriosis is because of all of the conditions that were on the previous page. While it may not be the most common, it is certainly the most serious. Excuse me, in terms of everyday, um, in terms of women who suffer greatly from one of these gynecological issues. Endometriosis is an extremely painful condition that approximately 10% of women are affected by that are of reproductive age. It's where uterine tissue actually grows in areas it's not supposed to be outside the uterus, namely in the abdomen. They have been able to find or uterine lining tissue, adhered to the outside of the colon, and that, of course, itself causes additional problems. So, um, the good news is women have been finding relief from endometriosis through cannabis. And doctors are finally getting wise to it because they're starting to study it more. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, well, we need to study it. We need more studies. They're doing it. They're trying very hard to get through studying some studies for us to be confident in. So this is a 2019 very recent study. Actually, in these lectures, everything I presented, all of the studies that I pulled from have been within 5 years of each other. So 2019 determined medicinal cannabis most effective treatment for endometriosis. Another study concluded that cannabis using women experience a decrease in gastrointestinal problems, nausea, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Uh, that's kind of everything. Like if a study actually is showing the things that cause women the most amount of problems when they are dealing with endometriosis, I'm so happy to be able to report that to you. Um, One of the methods of treatment for this endometriosis and probably many of the other things that we're going to discuss today is using vaginal suppositories as a method of delivery of their cannabis. And these are both CBD and THC infused suppositories. And this was a cute sentence that I stole. In the end, cannabis suppositories are revealing yet again that marijuana is a medical miracle no matter how it gets up inside you. I think a lot of people think that, when we discuss cannabis as medicine, that you sometimes have an image of Nana, toking a doobie on the side of the bed, for her arthritis. However, um, as you will see as we continue, this is not only uh, pretty common, but very, very effective. Um, the reason suppositories are so preferred, not only for male and female issues, but frankly for any issues, because of its simplicity. Um, they have both uh, rectal and vaginal suppositories. And the thing that's important here is because it can be directly delivered to the area of need, it bypasses the liver and you can use greater amounts of THC for whichever condition, without the euphoric high. And this is important too because the suppositories deliver about 80% of the medicine as compared to if you were to use an edible, which is reported to have about 35% delivery of the medicine, and smoking only 15%. And a lot of times people can't get the amount of medicine they need because the side effect of the euphoria, the high, prevents continued usage. You'd rather just go to sleep, which is not so bad sometimes too. All right. How about uh, cannabis and sexual uh, desire or libido? Um, Marijuana use is independently associated with increased sexual frequency and does not appear to impair sexual function. In fact, daily users across all demographics report having 20% more sex than those who've never used cannabis. Why is that? Fun fact: libido enhancer in women, low doses of marijuana can impact our cannabinoid receptors throughout the body, including the brain. And this can cause increase in positive endorphins, help reduce anxiety, reduce potential pain, and can which both can interfere with arousal. Marijuana is also thought to dilate the blood vessels, right? So this includes throughout the reproductive tract, including helping cause increased vaginal lubrication as well as genital sensitivity. All right, let's move on. Some common male problems. Um, Most of the male problems that we discuss are related to prostate issues. I will address them one at a time, but it's pretty much theoretically all the same. CBD tends to be the primary cannabinoid to help with prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is the second most common cancer that men face after skin cancer, impacting a large number of men, approximately 175,000 men each year in America. And I would not be surprised if each one of us knows someone who has had a brush with prostate cancer. So, over the past few years, researchers have been looking at the various cannabinoids to see which ones work. Now, remember, that part of the research is quite limited since America continues to prevent in depth research because of its Schedule 1 status. So, most of these studies have been done with CBD. But they did find that CBD was pretty effective in killing prostate cancer cells. All right, so prostatitis, what is that? So that's actually, you have the itis word at the end of it. That typically refers to an inflammation. So this is also an inflammation of the prostate, but not to be confused with an enlarged prostate. This one is usually caused from some type of bacteria that's entered the prostate from the urinary tract that causes irritation similar to an STD like HIV or chlamydia. Um, Because of the itis part, the inflammatory part, we know CBD or cannabidiol is a very effective anti-inflammatory, has anti-inflammatory properties. So this is not a surprise that this is the cannabinoid that can help. What I found interesting in my research is that it actually um, someone is able to actually prove some of the cannabinoid CBD, this particular cannabinoid's antibacterial property. So this sentence read that some researchers tested antibacterial properties of CBD and found that it had a very similar potency to that of common antibiotics. This was intriguing, and it is because that means more research and development um, can be performed to prove this. So I probably should have put that picture ahead of the prostate. But I put it there to show kind of what it might feel like to have an enlarged prostate. So that's typically known as BPH or benign prostatic hyperplasia. This is probably the most common issue that men face, especially as they age, causing unpleasant symptoms like painful urination, referred pain to the hips and pelvic area. Sometimes they can have blood in the urine or the semen, painful ejaculation, and frequent urination. Um, Sometimes untreated, it can cause urinary tract infections, kidney stones, but it is extremely uncomfortable, and that it's also scary to men because all of a sudden these symptoms start occurring and they aren't sure whether it's benign prostatic hyperplasia or some type of cancer. So it will take them to the doctor. What we have learned is that testosterone causes the prostate to continue to grow. So that might be causing a problem or be aiding in the problem of the growth of the number of cells um, that cause the prostate to enlarge. However, some research shows that some cannabinoids, like CBD, can inhibit testosterone production and may prove to be beneficial for those who, especially, have recurrent BPH. Um, but they found that THC is actually the one more closely associated with this effect. So, still some CBD value, but this time they were able to prove that THC helped decrease the testosterone level in people who are suffering with recurrent uh, benign prostatic hypertrophy. Um, don't forget, this was causing pain and discomfort, so benefit of cannabis can also provide some pain relief for this condition and inflammation, anti-inflammatory qualities. That's the one that didn't pop in my head right away. But uh, cannabis in general, decreasing pain, inflammation, but more importantly, testosterone production. All right, so let me check the time here. Oh, we're doing okay. Cannabis and sex. So, can cannabis increase intimacy? Intimacy. When I saw that word, I thought that's tricky because people may define it differently. But I think in terms of human connection, how do you study that? Well, as it turns out, um, they actually studied uh, men, of which 41 were not considering themselves straight, about their consider themselves non-straight, about their cannabis use. And they reported that their cannabis use improved their sexual experience significantly. And the reason being is because they said it helped them physically, meaning they lasted longer. They felt free to engage in different sex acts and had more intense orgasms. Other people said it lowered their inhibitions, so they felt less shame that may be associated that some people feel with sex and were able to be more intimate with their partner. And ap- apparently, if people sometimes feel this way, they tend to try to alleviate those anxious feelings uh, with other substances like alcohol or other drugs. But seeing that cannabis did these things for them and was much safer alternative, that's that was a big deal because they weren't using alcohol and or some other dangerous drug like methamphetamine. Oh, erectile dysfunction. So as men age, this becomes more of an issue. And so here are possible positive effects of marijuana on erectile dysfunction: dopamine release, pain reducer, anxiety reducer. So at some point, again, every man will have an issue with performance. So positive dopamine release is a relaxant, and it can cause the body to increase um, their pleasure sensors. The euphoric feeling can heighten their sexual sensitivity, making the experience more enjoyable. If you are someone who has injured your back at work, that may, hinder you from perform your full level of performance. Where marijuana can help relieve pain, now you're not so worried about that back pain. And sometimes the anxiety of possibly not performing as you would like can cause a worsening of the situation. So, the relaxing effects of cannabis can help decrease these anxious feelings, allowing men to perform uh, the way they want to instead of being worried about the pressure of the performance. All right, so some negative effects. Sometimes it can relax too much and you get too high and you might just fall asleep. Sometimes they found that THC can interrupt the receptors that inform the body to do its thing. Therefore, um, probably delivering maybe not uh, as strong or as firm of an erection as they would like. And finally, um, marijuana can lead to oversensitivity, therefore leading to premature ejaculation or loss of control uh, of that process. I think that at some point, everyone has been told that don't smoke weed, you won't be able to have any children, because I can hear a mother right now telling her teenage son their sperm is going to be slow and stupid. Well, sorta. I mean, there are finally studies to look at how cannabis does affect the sperm and fertility, but as someone mentioned at one point, there's a lot of teenage pregnancies with kids who are using cannabis and having unprotected sex. So I don't know if it's absolute, but yes, cannabis can affect the sperm quality and fertility by decreasing the motility, and some of the sperm can be malformed. So that's the end essentially of my talk on cannabis and male and female issues. These last slides are for me to remind you to enjoy the beauty and the bounty that is here for us on earth. I like to say, if God made it, eat it. And don't forget to work it out. We got to always keep moving. Don't forget to hydrate. That is life. As a reminder, we need to drink half of our body weight in water every day so that we continue to allow ourselves to do their things. And maybe most importantly, be mindful. Take some time to yourself, sit quietly, um, just breathe in. Don't think about anything, but be mindful of the moment. This is a reminder that as we improve our abilities in science and research, um, your DNA can actually determine how you metabolize and utilize how your body metabolizes and utilizes cannabis. Um, this is a company called endodna.com that I've affiliated with. So if anyone's ever interested in learning more about that, you can reach me. Um, we've talked about all these topics and about cannabis usage. Just remember that suppository picture. That is one of many ways to use cannabis. It doesn't have to be smoking, although people do prefer that the most. There are many other options in methods of medicating, as shown here on the screen. Naturally, the different methods take different amounts of time. Inhalation being the fastest, oral ingestion being the slowest. The tinctures where you put it under your tongue, kind of intermediate, but uh, we have to add a new one, that suppository uh, uh, picture, because that one also works pretty quickly. I would guess around within 10 to 20 minutes. This is an app, so excuse me, so that when you are um, trying these different things, you can keep track. What was it that you smoked? Where did it come from? What is it? What form is it in? So that you can kind of keep track of what you're trying as you use cannabis as medicine. So, what's the future? Um, More than half of Americans now, I think the last total that I saw was somewhere near 70% of Americans think that marijuana should be legalized. It already is legal in 37 states, with 18 states allowing cannabis to be used recreationally. Shifts in policy are on the forefront. It is still a controlled substance. However, these guys in the second week of July proposed a descheduling plan to the Senate finally. So I think we might be on our way to finally uh, getting this medicine removed off of the Schedule 1, DEA list, Schedule 1. Because weed is from the earth, God put this here for me and for you. Take advantage, man. Take advantage. So this ends my conversation. and the lecture series, actually. So I appreciate the invitation from the Cannabis Equity and Inclusion community, and hopefully um, I have helped someone out there learn something new, and I look forward to continuing this work. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. My computer is lagging, but that was such a great presentation. I have so many questions. Um, I have questions. Thank you for thank you for giving us such a well thought out presentation about female and male issues. We have someone in the Whitney Beverly. She was suffering with stage 2 endometriosis and was told she couldn't have children. Started cannabis in 2018, and now she's on baby number 2.
Oh, that's so
That's a
wonderful.
blessing.
Thank you for that report. Congratulations. I just got all teary for you. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I have a few questions. You showed the suppositories. Have you been seeing anything with this is something that I feel like a lot of women may not feel comfortable talking about, but I just hear about it so often. It's called BV or vaginitis that women experience. Supposedly it's more common amongst Black women. Have you seen like CBD being used to treat that infection?
Um, so, no, not directly, but I can see the correlation. So, BV, bacterial vaginosis, is not necessarily more common in Black women. That's just a female thing. That essentially is defined as an overgrowth of natural bacteria, meaning the environment in which the bacteria is able to grow in your vagina is not balanced. So let's say, for instance, we spend a lot of time as women eating too much sugar, not enough vegetables in our diet, not enough of the type of vegetables that would cause opposite effect. Uh, when I'm sort of stuttering because I don't want to get too deep into pH and how many bacteria are normal, how many are good ones, bad ones, etc. But the bottom line is the environment of the vagina has to be just right. Otherwise, the bad bacteria will take over, and that's called essentially bacterial vaginosis. So for the longest, it's been difficult to not only identify but difficult to treat because women don't often recognize it at all. And when I say difficult to treat, it sometimes can, once you start one antibiotic, you can cause a further problem and have to use a second antibiotic to fix the first problem you're trying to fix. So it would make sense that if someone used a CBD suppository, vaginal suppository, yeah, sure, they might be able to arrest the process. However, that doesn't seem very likely. I would think they'd have to either use quite a bit or for several days. Um, but I never cease to be amazed. I don't know. Clearly, something like that has not been studied or that I came across. But yeah, in the future, who knows? That may be the answer. Because right now, they certainly do use vaginal cream that can be inserted directly with an antibiotic cream that is inserted that can be used to treat bacterial vaginosis. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess we'll see.
And is CBD is antibacterial, right?
That's what this research is
Or no?
showing. Yes, yes, yes. And that's what they were showing. That's what I mentioned in the lecture with regards to the prostatitis. Because to be honest, I don't know that I would ever recommend that anyone replace a regular antibiotic when trying to treat something like chlamydia or another sexually transmitted infection with only cannabis. I kind of want to make sure tried and true. I know that's gone. However,
Yeah.
the fact that they're studying it is really intriguing. So yes, it was the CBD form, the CBD cannabinoid that was being shown to have antibacterial properties.
So not for an STD, but um, is BV a STD or a yeast infection?
Those are two different things. Um, Bacterial vaginosis is not specifically sexually transmitted, although it can be. Remember, it is the overgrowth of abnormal bacteria in the vaginal canal. So, the way it can be a sexually transmitted condition is if, uh, and let's see how to put this delicately. If a man is, if he's the dipstick and he's dipped his stick in different bowls, and this bowl is now being the bacteria in this bowl is being introduced to the bacteria in a new bowl, then that can be problematic to the female who's not used to that type of that's not her flavor. So that in that way it could be sexually
Okay.
transmitted. But but for the most part, it is um self-contained issue, and much of it is based on our diet. You've heard that people say you know eat more yogurt, and that's because yogurt has natural uh, bacteria that can regulate your um, GI tract as well as your um, uh, gynecological tract. And yeast infection is just that. That's not
Okay.
bacteria. That's yeast, which is a form, which is a form of the fungal community. So that's a whole other thing. But yogurt is always good in everyone's diet for the abundance of good bacteria that it offers our body to help regulate and cleanse itself.
Okay. And what about let's talk about that, the yeast infection. So let's say instead of inserting something, um, I know that some weed is anti-fungal. With that, how does that work? How does that even work? If I'm smoking something and it's anti-fungal, anti-fungal effect?
Well, yeah, but again, I would never risk my goodies on that entirely, only because it can cause further complications down the line. So, while there may be antibacterial and antifungal effects in certain cannabis strains or varieties, I should say, or cannabinoids even, um, I still, as a physician, am not comfortable recommending that anyone use that alone. Um, you risk too many other conditions interfering with your reproductive system to just risk using it alone like that. So I hope that's not what the person asking the question wanted to know, but um, you're going to always have to go to your doctor um, to get looked at. Because see, here's the thing: if you have a yeast infection or any infection in your genital area, you need to be tested for multiple different things because a lot of times these things roll together. And while a yeast infection is just an abnormal environment issue, similar to bacterial vaginosis, an abnormal environment that caused an infection in the vagina, for instance, that doesn't mean that you may not have been somehow exposed to another sexually transmitted infection. And your doctor will check for multiple things and then treat you accordingly. And so that's always going to be my advice.
Okay. So do you see marijuana replacing antibiotics? That's pretty much what I was getting at. Was are we going to
No,
start seeing that in the future? Are we seeing that now? No.
no,
That's
no,
heartbreaking.
no. Well, I say no emphatically because one, there are so many different antibiotics that are focused on so many different things. Now, we have a large knowledge now of different infections and germs in the world. And these antibiotics have been, a lot of them have been focused towards killing that particular thing. Um, and the more we can hone in on that particular germ, the better. So maybe one day, but cannabis is so far behind in terms of research, which particular combination of cannabinoid, terpene, um, uh, profile would be needed to kill those, such a laser focused request. I think we're a long way away. But again, stay balanced. Keep your diet in good. Make sure you drink your water, get your exercise. All these things help contribute to keeping our body healthy in general. I I I know that there's a lot of people in this day and age of coronavirus who are very confident that they do the right thing every day in terms of eating right, eating um, balanced, nutritious food, plenty of vegetables, plenty of water. They don't worry about getting sick. It's the people that are unhealthy, out of shape, not drinking their water, not uh, keeping their weight under control, their diet in check, that are the ones that are most sick. This is kind of like a real world, everyday thing we're seeing it live and in person happening. So there's a lot that goes into fighting germs. So again, I don't think that there will be any time soon that cannabis alone will be considered a good replacement for any antibiotic.
Okay. Well, that's heartbreaking. I was definitely looking forward to a shift in medicine. So I'm going to still hold on to that hope. Okay.
Sure,
Because,
sure.
yeah, antibiotics, especially when it comes to things like, I guess, MRSA and VRSA, how these bacterias are mutating and becoming antibiotic resistant and stuff like that. I would really hope that that is where a lot of the focus is for me.
No, what you have to understand is just like just like we are experiencing this, I'm going to go back to real world stuff that's in our face every day, this coronavirus variant. The antibiotic resistance you're referring to can be viewed similarly. Like, wait a minute, first it was this, and we used this medicine to kill it. Now it's all of a sudden resistant to that. Well, that's what we're seeing currently. The coronavirus turned a corner and, put a different disguise on and became Delta. It's a different thing. Now we're chasing that ghost. So this is the nature of people who study infectious diseases. So again, the biggest defense against these diseases is maintaining your health. And if cannabis is part of your daily routine to maintain your health, then perhaps you can be protected in that way. But in terms of treatment, I actually don't see cannabis, again, catching up to what we already know in the current world of antibiotics, antifungals, anti-pesticides, etc. It's got a long way to go.
So it won't do that, but what about, but a private physician can start doing things like that, correct? Like for their patients?
No.
Or you wouldn't? You said that you would not. Okay.
No, I don't know that
Okay.
anyone would.
Gotcha.
I do not believe that anyone would. And again, the same reason. You do not have those answers in terms of research, and it is too big of a risk to the patient. I would think that that might be a bit careless of a physician to recommend cannabis only in, as an biotic, antifungal, anything like that. The risk is too great for the patient.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, that is very insightful. So, do you have questions from anyone watching? Let's see. All right. It doesn't look like it. Last lecture for run. Female and male issues. This has been a great conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Dr. Jones, before we close out?
No, no, except for it's been a great pleasure and motivator actually for me to uh, do some of this research, kind of giving me updates too on what's been happening out there in the research world. It looks like of all the things that I presented to you guys, the greatest amount of research that's happening around cannabis is around its neuroprotective properties. Um, and so I think that there's a lot that's going to come from those studies. And I look forward to that. So thank you again for inviting me to do this and for having me for the last 5 Saturday mornings. I hope that I've been able to teach people something. I certainly have enjoyed it myself too. So thank you again.
All right. Well, thank you for having this time with us. It's been a pleasure holding these lectures with you. It's been very informative. You are a wealth of knowledge in your industry, and we're happy to give this information to who are interested. I can't wait for our next run like this. I'm really excited about that and seeing where we take it. Until then, I want to thank everybody for watching. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, YouTube. Leave us comments. Come to our workshops. We are here to help people be informed about the cannabis industry, feel interested in to start a business or lobby for cannabis policy, we're here for. So stay connected. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.